Today is Thursday, June 12th, 2025. I am the interviewer Amy Moritz with Martha Altmire at her residence in Vendago Township, Pennsylvania. Martha coached girls basketball for 35 years at Olean High School with 484 wins, 19 CCIAC league titles, and 7 Section 6 titles. She guided the 1981-82 squad to a school record 24-game winning streak and the Far West Regional Championship. From 1995 to 2005, her teams won 63 straight league games, along with 9 IAABO Tournament titles. She's a member of a whole host of Hall of Fames here: the New York State Basketball Hall of Fame, the Section 6 Hall of Fame, the Cattaraugus County Hall of Fame, the Olean High School Wall of Fame, and the Butler County Hall of Fame. Martha, hello.
Hello.
I'm so excited to be here talking with you. So first, tell me about a time that you first remember falling in love with sports.
Oh, I was always in love with sports. Like, I always did things outside. We were always playing games and doing things. And so I just kind of grew up with sports. But that's one of the reasons I wanted to major in physical education in college, because I like being outside, I like doing different things, and I like playing different games.
Now, what were the opportunities like for girls playing when you were growing up?
At the time when I was growing up, there really wasn't a lot of opportunity. The main thing when I was in high school was we had an intramural program where we would go one day a week and play or whatever, but there was no organized or interscholastic sports at that time. Cheerleading was about the only thing at that point.
When you were growing up and playing, were you playing with, you have a brother, right? So were you playing with him?
I was playing with my brother, and we did different things. Mm-hmm. You know, I was never really, would play like pick up softball games, pick up things, but never actually participated in an organized sport, so to speak.
Right.
Like, what we're thinking about today.
Sure, yeah. Was there a sport that when you were growing up, that you particularly loved? I mean, was basketball something you always liked, or?
No.
Okay.
No, not really. It was something, it was just kind of everything. And that's what I said. I enjoyed the sports. I enjoyed being outside. And when it was time to look ahead to college, I couldn't picture myself working inside an office. I like to be out, like to be doing different things. So again, that's why I majored in physical education.
Okay. And that was, and where did you go to college again?
I went to college in Anderson University in Anderson, Indiana. Okay. And I graduated in 1971. And so that's kind of when I got, I started interviewing for jobs. Even at that point, I wasn't really into organized sports, even any of it. I did play basketball for a year in college because it was a requirement to get my phys ed degree. But the only reason I played was to get the phys ed degree. So that's it. And that's what I think is ironic with my story. A lot of people, think about coaching. They've played organized sports and have moved on, like from the high school level to different levels, and eventually got into the coaching. Where after I graduated from college, I was interviewing mainly for phys ed jobs. I had no intention. I hadn't even thought of it. I never even took a course in coaching. So when it was late in August, I had a few interviews, and to be honest with you, they didn't go real well. I was getting turned down. So one evening, just out of nowhere, the gentleman that was the athletic director at Olean High School at the time, David McCauley, called me on the telephone and said they had an opening, and somewhere they got my name. I, to this day, do not know where they got it, but they got my name and wanted to know if I'd be interested in coming up for an interview for their physical education opening, which I said yes. And the first thing I did when I hung up the phone was get a map and look to see where Olean, New York was, because I had no idea. I'd been to college in Indiana, I'd been around Pennsylvania, but I'd never been really into New York, only maybe to Niagara Falls. So I went up for the interview, and they outlined the position, and Dave McCauley, he had a vision there. He wanted girls' sports to kind of get started. He wanted to do like on a small scale level, like field hockey, basketball, track and field, different things. And one of the stipulations, if I took the phys ed job, was I had to coach basketball and cheerleading and track and field. So at that point, it was late in August. I was getting desperate, so I said yes to everything. Whether I didn't know anything about it, I shouldn't admit this, but I wasn't up to date on it. But I said yes to everything just to see if I could get the job. And as luck would have it, I did tell them though, I said, I'll work at it. I said, and as luck would have it, I did, they offered me the job and I accepted. And that's how I ended up in Olean. And that's how I actually started, was that year they wanted me to put out several teams. I actually started with cheerleading, and I was very lucky with the cheerleading and with basketball and the track and field. I stepped into a situation where the students had some knowledge of the sport or what they were involved in. My cheerleading, the cheerleaders, they were pretty much involved in it. And with the basketball, most of my team consisted that first year of players that had older brothers or played a lot. They were skilled. They were very good athletes. And I think that's what helped. And then after it evolved, I became more interested in it. And then I started reading books, going to basketball camps. I worked a lot of basketball camps and doing everything, coaches' clinics, anything I could do to get to learn something about the sport. And the more I got into it, the more I enjoyed it, the more I liked it. And I gave up the cheerleading and the track later on in my career, but the basketball I stuck with. I really wanted to focus on it and work on it. And I like to think I kind of evolved as the sport evolved. Because when I first started, there wasn't a lot out there for women or girls. And when I retired, it was just a totally new situation, a totally different ball game. Things had come so far, the way it was organized, the different things the players were able to receive, the awards and the accolades they could receive and things like that. It was just really a transition, and I transgressed with that.
All right. I wanted to ask you, so physical education, you weren't thinking about coaching. You were just thinking about phys ed. At that time, so you graduated from college in 71?
Yes.
Okay. So at that time, was there a different philosophy for how you did phys ed for girls and for boys, or what was that like?
I think it was kind of a different philosophy, yes, because when I first started teaching, it was girls only. And you wore the gym uniform and the whole thing. It was kind of a structured thing. And then later on, and I don't remember exactly what year, but we moved to a co-ed program where we had our staff would teach co-ed classes, would offer different subjects, and the student would pick what subject they wanted, and then an instructor would teach whoever signed up for that. And I got to admit, that was a shock awakening. After working phys ed with girls for so many years, to go over to this co-ed situation, working with the boys and the girls. Boys, it was an entirely new ball game.
I bet. How so?
Well, so, like they're more ambitious. They're all the time moving around like girls. And, probably from phys ed, they like to do the minimum. Well, boys like to do the maximum. And when you blend the two together, you can get it can be quite an experience, put it that way.
I bet. And so you started at Olean for 71, 72?
Right, 1971.
So that's before Title IX is passed. And you're telling me that the athletic director wanted to create these girls' sports programs.
Yes,
too.
he was really into it, kind of. And the first, I'm trying to think, the first 2 or 3 years were, we were like set up the games. It was mainly county things. We'd play different schools in the county. We'd set up and we'd go around. And I don't know if we would consider it more of a glorified intramural team or whatever. But I know like in 72, the second year, we won the county championship. They had enough, they won the county championship. The first couple years, they were... like I said, I was learning the situation, and the players I had were unbelievable. Actually, I'm still in touch with some of them today, which is amazing. But we didn't have like a set gym space where we could not go into the high school gym and practice. We never practiced in the high school gym. We had to go around to different elementary schools. Whatever, there was a partial gym or something available. And I think we played our games in, if I remember correctly, in some elementary schools. And they had no uniforms. We had these yellow shirts. We got this glue or this tape, and we pasted numbers on them. They weren't even really school colors, and we wore these blue shorts. Why we picked blue and yellow, I don't know. But that's what we did for the first couple of years. They had no uniforms. They had to buy their own shoes. And it was mainly just county. Then I remember we heard about when CCIAC came in, they were kind of organized a little more. And then we worked till we got accepted into that league. That's when it became more organized and more, formal. It was probably about 73, 74 after that.
How much did you, at the beginning, you're thrown in, you're like, okay, I'm going to learn how to coach,
exactly,
right?
Yeah, yes.
But as it went on, what was it like to not have to go to fight? Then did you have to fight to not go to the elementary schools and for gym time and for uniforms? Was that a challenge? What was that? It
was a challenge. Like? Yeah, it was a challenge. And I think too, anybody that, was in this situation, you learn. I was never one to really stand up and say, what I thought, and I think that's one of the things I really learned early on. You have to demand or you have to pursue what you want. And luckily, though, early on, the athletic director and that, they were pretty accommodating, but I didn't really demand a lot. I didn't know to demand, or I didn't need it at that point. I had enough to get me by. And I don't know when exactly, but it just kept evolving. I think once we got into the league and we had something to, you had more goals. You have a league goal, you have things like that. And I think we started, more people were involved, more people were interested, and then things started to get better. We'd go for gym time. For a lot of years, though, I had to take the gym time that was left. It'd be like late in the evening or whatever. It wasn't like, okay, this week you get it after school or next week. Then probably as it went on, I'd say Oh, it was, I don't know, probably in the 80s or not even that early, probably in the late 80s when we built that new gym there in Olean. Then things started to get more equalized. But I don't know, I always saw things, I thought, well, I want my players to have the best they can have, like I always look for uniforms and I always, I gotta admit, the people that I work with were always very supportive. When we talked about taking the job, when I took the job, Pennsylvania's where I'd always grown up, and I thought, I'll just go to New York for 5 years, maybe 4 or 5 years, and feel it out. And the people that I met and the people that I worked with were probably the main reason that I stayed. The community and my co-workers and the school there, and then I got really involved with the students and everything. Mm-hmm. And I had no desire to leave. That's one of the reasons I stayed there so long.
You stayed 30 years longer than you thought you were going to be there.
Exactly.
So you mentioned some areas of support that you got. Were there pockets of resistance as you were building?
Oh, there was always resistance. Yes.
Where was that from?
Oh, like different people. You're just a girls' sport, and you're not bringing in a lot of crowds and stuff like that. And I think the other thing too was publicity. It wasn't getting publicity. People didn't. They didn't write about it, or they didn't as much as they, probably your male sports. Mm-hmm. I think that had a lot to do with it. And then once you start getting publicity, and then you start getting better, and then I think I started not backing down. I've always had a standard. I always felt, and sometimes it wasn't pretty, but I held up to that standard. And anybody that knows me or worked with me up there could probably tell you the same thing. I just didn't give up. I was relentless in what I wanted.
You mentioned, publicity certainly, was something that was helpful as you got it. So how did you go about, at that time, it's pretty much the Olean paper, right? The Times
Right,
Herald?
it was pretty much Olean paper. And I think it just kind of evolved. Mm-hmm. I think more people got into it, and I think then more, I don't know, it just sort of, Title IX would have been coming into play there too, and that would have had a lot to do with it. And then we started playing, like Western New York started setting up sectionals, and we were always a member of Section 6, and we'd participate in anything like that would, help that situation. And again, like I already stated, I wasn't one to give up. And I learned early on that if somebody said something, you said, well, okay, I guess I can agree with that, then you never got it. You had to stick up for stand up. And I always felt that the players that I worked with worked hard. They gave me a lot. That's the least I could do, was stick up and make sure things were well for them or right for them. Like if it came to an all-star meeting, if it came whatever, I always felt that they deserved the best from me.
How much did winning help?
I think winning helped a lot. And the thing about winning is, when I first started, the first several years, and I'm not even sure what year it started, there was no JV team. And then once we put in a JV team, and I hired a JV coach and that, and we were winning, I think that helped a lot. And I think that I always had people working and supporting the program that helped push it. And the more we did, I tried to, branch out and play a lot of games like out of my league or out of the Olean area, so to give us exposure. I felt that was one of the things. And when we got the exposure and then we got the wins on top of it, that just that helped it a lot.
Yeah. How was obviously you had talented teams because you won a lot. Tell me about some of the athletes that you had.
Oh, I had some very talented athletes. I don't know where to start. There were so many of them. But I think as a whole, what made the program over the years were two key factors. I always had assistant coaches that were dedicated and always had my back. They were in it for the program. They weren't in it for themselves or anything. They contributed immensely. And then the players that I had, they were always really dedicated, and they worked hard. They were relentless. They wanted, they liked achieving, and they really worked as a whole to be good. And I think when you put those good players around exceptional players, which you had, like when I started out early on, I had a couple, I had a girl named Mary Rich who had a brother. Mary Pacholi was another one. She ended up actually going to Bonaventure, and she was, Bonaventure at the time was just getting started in the women's basketball. And she was one of the first players, I think, to go down there to participate in their program. I had, over the course of my career, I had about 3 Division I players. Probably the one that got the most accolades was in the 80 era, Kathy McKenzie. Kathy was one of the top 50 players in the country. She ended up, she got a ride to Brown University. She was the first 1,000-point scorer in Olean. And at that time, to me, it was always amazing because there was no three-point arc, and she only played varsity for 3 years. So for her to achieve what she did, and she was one of the first, I think, all Western New York players to come out of Olean. She just really had a tremendous career. And the thing is, when they have a good career, you go with them. And my career as a whole, I've noticed, run in eras. It would be like I had the Kathy McKenzie years. That was when we were 24-0. We ended up losing in the state finals. And that was that. And then I had another girl, Tricia Carney. Now, she played for me, and she ended up going to Canisius on a Division I scholarship. And she was my assistant for quite a few years, for several years. She's a very loyal. She come back. She started working in the program. And it was really nice because she had the same values that I had. She'd come up through the program, so she knew what it consisted of. She knew what was required, and she was real good. And then I had another one, probably Nicole Merlo. Nicole I had in the, probably around, let me think here, probably in the late 90s. And Nicole, she ended up going to Coastal Carolina, and she was really heavily recruited. Her and Kathy McKenzie were probably 2 of the most heavily recruited I had. I had quite a few other players. This was one thing that I'm proud of as a coach. Any player that played for me that wanted to go on to a college, no matter what level, went. I had, at one point there in the late 90s, later on in my career, at one point I had 30-some, eventually in different years coaching. Several of them right now are back in coaching. And that's what I said. They seem to carry the program with them. And later on, I had, there was Ashley Turner, there was Holly Speroni, Julie Smith, Molly Shola, Lauren Simmons. There's so many. You hate to just start naming, because each one contributed in a certain year era. And they really contributed. Like the last, we talk about the team in the 80s that went to the state finals. The last team that I coached, I knew I was going to retire. So I think the big joke among us, and at that point, my coaches were really, I was lucky the last several years there. After Tricia Carney moved on, she moved on to college ball. She started coaching. And Randy Samuelson and Don Scholas started working with me. At that time, they both had daughters, though, in the program. But they were very, very knowledgeable when it came to the sport. And like I said, the last year, we kept talking. It was a joke. We didn't start out well. And we thought, well, now what gym are we going to end this career in? It was a joke because we figured it was going to be in one of these CCIAC places we never thought. And lo and behold, those players put it together, and we didn't lose till the Far West Regionals. We won a Section 6 title that year. We ran the overall title. We won the league. We come back, and it was amazing, you know. But it was something that, I don't know, like I said, they always seemed to put things together to make each other better, to put each other on another level, I guess.
Yeah. It sounds like a culture that you also maybe helped foster, right?
It was something I tried to make them think teamwork was essence. Teamwork was a big thing. And then like when Don Scholas started working with me and everything, he was a big teamwork guy. We were always teamwork people. And another player, I had an era there with Carolyn Baker, and there was Nicole Vitello and Amber Fye, and these players, they work, like I said, we try to make them, you're as good as the people around you, and you can bring people up, and you won't be as, and I think that worked. It was a good culture to have because it kept us winning. We kept advancing. And that's what I said when I look back, and I think, you know, it's hard to pick out because there were some exciting years there. There was really quite some stories to tell.
I'm sure there's some that probably we don't want to record, or some of those
Definitely.
stories.
And if you talk to a lot of coaches colleagues that I went against, I'm sure there are numerous ones out there you don't want to record.
You know, I wanted to ask you the IAABO Tournament that was held at St. Bonaventure every Christmas holiday, Christmas break. You know, it started out just for boys, and then girls ended up in there. I remember from my time in Olean, even as a student at St. Bonaventure, that tournament going on, and it being a really big deal locally in high school basketball. Was it a big deal?
Oh, it was a tremendously big deal.
And then how important was it when then they they let girls then come in and play too?
Oh, it was really, really a big deal when they finally let girls come into it, and it was a chance to really, your Olean is so entwined with St. Bonaventure that, your players in that, they were always going to games down there. They were always going down there. And to be able to get down there and participate and play actually on that court, in that locker room, it was a nice experience. It was really a good experience. And it was a chance, again, to showcase your program because you were playing to a group of people, you're playing to spectators that normally may not watch girls basketball the way they would schedule the games in that. A lot of the people that came in to watch and spectators were more interested in the boys aspect of the tournament, but they came and they watched, and then they got interested. They got hooked on it. And like I said, it was always really a good experience, and you always wanted to do your best there because you didn't want to look bad. But I think I suffered probably one of my worst defeats on the Bonaventure court down there. It was back, I can't think of the year exactly, but we were playing Bradford, and at that year, Bradford had two girls that were really very exceptional. And we went down there and we started, and I think in the first half, we scored 2 points maybe, or 4 points from the foul line. I was ready to get on the bus and go home. And then we come back. We didn't do very well. But I do remember that. It was so bad you wanted to crawl under the bleachers. You didn't want to come back after that game. I was trying to think what year that was, but yeah, I do. That's one of the ones I do remember. Stick out. And then we won a lot down there too. We had a triple overtime game one year down there, and we did. There's some good experiences down there. Mm-hmm. I still have some trophies up there from that tournament. Yeah, it was like in the early 90s. It was like 90, 91, 92 there, because those are the kids that were down there. Uh-huh. But yeah, no, I'll never forget that, because like I said, I think we just couldn't even get the ball over half court.
just one of those games.
It was one of those games. It was one of those days. And I will admit that team was very talented. And the other thing too, like Pennsylvania starts a little, the starting dates were different at that time. And we were just kind of getting our feet wet too. But yeah, it was definitely an experience.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier one of your players who was the first 1,000-point scorer at Olean. And you mentioned that she did it at a time, not just in 3 years, but with no three-point line. And when I was talking with Kay Gould from Southwestern, we were talking about how that 1,000-point scorer was such a big deal pre-3-point line too, because that was a lot that,
she had, Kathy McKenzie was like a 6-foot player, and she got a lot of her points from the foul line in that. And the other thing, I think the all-time scorer, and she still is the all-time scorer at Olean, is Holly Speroni. Now, you look at Kathy McKenzie scored over 1,000-some points in 3 years. Holly played on varsity from 8th grade on. Her and Julie Smith were two 8th graders I put on my varsity team. And Holly was an excellent player. She's very skilled. She's a good point guard. And she started that year, and she had the opportunity with the 3-point to play 5 years. So there is it did. It made a big impact.
Yeah. How did you, obviously the 3-point line comes in, shot clock, right? There's lots of different rule niggles that kind of come along in the game. How did the game evolve in your time?
The game really evolved the pace of it. I think the pace was the big thing. And living now in Pennsylvania, they don't have a 30-second shot clock. Okay. I really like the fact that New York State High School followed like the NCAA women's rules, so to speak. We had the 30-second shot clock. We did play the quarters, but 30 seconds is a long time. You do pick up your tempo. And I had a section in span in my career where I was playing like 5-6 players, and I wasn't doing real well. I was maybe 500, And after that span, I kind of went to a pressing game where we picked up our tempo, and I tried to play like 7 to 9, 10 kids a game, and we ran a lot. And I think when we started pressing, people started using presses and picking up that tempo and more sophisticated things. I think that's how it evolved. It got so it was really fast paced at one point. I often wondered what it would be like to coach down here and put in that fast pace when you have no 30-second clock.
Yeah.
But actually, that's a long time. You can do a lot in that. And what we tried to do, and this was later on in my career, and I really worked well for me. We always put up a lot of shots. We tried to, press, trap, and things. And I think what it did, it made the game exciting. The kids loved to play it because they knew they were going to get to play. And I think it was good for the spectators because we were all over.
Fun to watch.
It was fun to watch, and people come to watch because they were fun to watch, and they were, And the other thing too, you didn't have to have a lot of height to do this. If you had some skilled ball players that had like the basic skills, they could handle the ball, they could move the ball. And the big thing was the defense. You had to be able to move, and you had to be able to, position yourself. Mm-hmm. But no, I think too. I think the more publicity, and I think outside influences too. Like your colleges started putting more emphasis on the women's sports, and these other places that were putting more emphasis on it. Automatically, it trickles down to the high school level. So that's what I think a lot of it evolved from.
Uh-huh. What was the competition? You mentioned like the county, you played like county schools, and there was a county championship before you were in the CCIAC league. So
there wasn't, I don't want to downplay it, but there wasn't a lot of competition. And as I said earlier, I wasn't real knowledgeable in the situation, but the players that I had were very skilled and were just athletic. You know how if you go out and you play, they participated with their brothers, or they participated on the playground, and they really kind of liked it. And it was just it was more of a fun thing, where I think later on it became more of a pressure thing, and at least for me, the better the program got, the more pressure I felt to succeed. Mm-hmm. And that's hard sometimes, to keep that standard. Because once we'd set the standard, and I got to give those early players credit, they did set a good standard, because they won, but they won mainly just because they knew more than the other team. They were just, you want to say you're lucky, but we weren't lucky. They just were better.
They were, yeah. Was there a point, like you mentioned, like you weren't a basketball player, you weren't a coach, you can't even a coach. Was there a point though when you fell in love with basketball? Was there a point that you're like, you had two other sports?
I know. I think it was, I think I always kind of had it, but I really got into it in the early 80s. That's when I gave up the cheerleading and the track and field. Mm-hmm. I really focused on the basketball. Mm-hmm. And I think the reason I really liked it was I really got into it. My love for it was a fast-paced game. I liked the way it evolved. And I mentioned I went to a lot of camps and a lot of clinics, and I met a lot of people I really liked, conversing with and being around. And I think that helped. And so it was just, I wanted to be in that atmosphere. And then I enjoyed the competition. I enjoyed the seasons, like you enjoyed the practice and that, but I really did. I enjoyed the competition. Mm-hmm.
When they named the court after you?
Yes.
Right? Tell me when they told you that was going to happen.
Well, actually, they never told me.
They never told you?
No, they never told me. And what they did, they were very clever about it. It was after the season was over, and my brother and his wife and that, they'd come up to quite a few games because we'd been, like when I would get into the playoffs and that, they would come up quite a bit for sectional games or championship games or something. And it was after the season was over, and I was just going to take the weekend off, and they kept insisting they were coming up. And I couldn't figure out, I tried to tell them, forget it, or whatever, but they insisted, so they come up, and we were going to go to dinner. And instead of going to dinner, we went down to the high school, and I walked in, and there were the whole line of all my former players. There were cheerleaders and everybody, and that's when I knew. I didn't know up till that point. Like, my parents were there, my aunt and uncles, some of my family members, and they had this all planned out. They did quite a good job. They did a very good job with it.
So what was going through your mind then?
Oh, I don't know. I was totally surprised. And I don't know really what was going through my mind. I was just totally dumbfounded, so to speak, because at first I didn't realize what was going on, and then all of a sudden it hit me, And they had a program all put together, and the woman that was Master of Ceremonies, her Maureen Keenan-LeBoeuf, she is a Bonner graduate, actually. She was the first person I met when I came to Olean. She was my cheerleading captain. And we always had this strong bond. She went on, and she's done very well. Speaking of people that I've had in my career, she was a lieutenant major or lieutenant colonel in the United States Army. She was the first women's athletic director at West Point. And she actually came back to Bonaventure in several years before I retired. They had a women in sports day down there. Bonaventure had it every day. And she actually came back, and she gave me a coin that you give to special people. I can't think of the name of it now. It'll come to me. But she was the Master of Ceremonies that night. Right now, actually, last year, though, she was inducted into the Army Women's Hall of Fame in Washington, D.C. She had quite a distinguished career. And, it's Commander of the Sword. Master of the Sword was the name of the coin. I still have the coin back there. And they only make like 30 of them or something. Each special high-ranking officers get them. And she said they give them to people that have done something significant in their life. And she awarded me that coin. And so she was the MC, and they had this program, and then they unveiled the court, and they had like a scrimmage game back and forth between some of the players that I'd had, former players. And a lot of them, I was surprised, a lot of them came back. There was, I told you I had this here in the front. That's how many came back.
Oh, wow. It's a whole big list of basketball and cheerleaders.
Yeah, there was a lot of
cheerleaders that came back, too.
Yeah, there was a lot of cheerleaders came back. I must have made a better impact in cheerleading than I thought I would. I never cheered or anything. That was another thing that I got into. But
what did it hit you at that point, or maybe a little later, the impact that you had at Olean?
I think it's probably later. Mm-hmm. You don't realize it as you're living it. Mm-hmm. And I think, and then the other thing that I did, I left Olean. So you don't really realize, once in a while I'll go back, or once in a while you'll come across and you'll meet somebody that had an impact. But I think when the impact, actually recently, you probably saw there where Don Chola passed away. Mm-hmm. Well, when I went up to the funeral home, so many people came up to me and thanked me, or said it was good to see you, or what. Even there were even some gentlemen there from Section 6 and everything that had come down to the funeral. And I guess then you realize, you know, the impact you maybe had, or once in a while somebody will drop you a note or something. And that's when I think it hits you.
Yeah.
And then, like, coming here now, it's like a different life, because it was like something that happened again a while back. Like now, there, when I was in Olean, you know, you didn't, everywhere you went, somebody knew you. Now, I'm just one of the crowd. That's a good thing.
Get to hide back a little bit again, right?
Yeah.
Not always out in that public eye. You know, you mentioned how intertwined Olean and St. Bonaventure, Olean, the community, is with St. Bonaventure. Did you see with your girls' teams, was there an impact about because basketball and St. Bonaventure are synonymous, mostly men, but also with the development of the women's team? Did that impact the community and the girls that you coach?
It might have to an extent, but I don't think it was a major impact. You know what I mean? Because I think Bonaventure, too, was kind of looking for its way. At the same time we were looking for our way. We were all trying to find our way at the same time. And I think one of the things that impacted me with St. Bonaventure women's basketball, well, like we would get on there, were the teams they played. They brought in very good teams. And I think, you know, like let's say, okay, they're playing so-and-so, go down and watch the game, or go down and see the game. And once in a while, a team would come up to the high school and practice. They couldn't get in on account of the men's basketball. And anytime I had that opportunity, I would always open the gym and take care of that particular coach. Just like one of the ones that I opened the gym for more than once and actually took care of Dawn Staley. When she would come with Temple. Every year she would always come up to the high school and practice. And I would open the gym for her and meet her, you know, have her team come in and everything. And with that intertwined, that was nice to be able to do stuff like that. Because Bonaventure always seemed to didn't hesitate. If they needed to come up, they came up, or they asked to use the gym.
Mm-hmm. What does Title IX mean to you?
I think Title IX was a good thing from the aspect that it brought equality, and it made schools, universities and stuff look at their program with a different insight. You know, like they had to bring it up to quality, and they had to offer to these females what they offered to the males. And I think that helped a lot on the high school level, because, you know, if you see the males doing this, you know, you got to put in more to make it at least comparable. And I think it was a big help. I think it was a plus. And I think that's probably one of the main reasons the program's turned around and are at the level they're at now. And you realize they are really at a sophisticated level. I noticed even the last few years I was coaching, the sophistication of the whole situation, like your scholarships, your money, everything. I think it was a big impact, because if it hadn't have happened, I don't know if it would have got, female sports would have got the exposure they got. Mm-hmm. I think it made people really look at them in a different light.
Mm-hmm. Martha, thank you. That wasn't too hard, was it?
No, we're done here.
We're done.
Oh.